Hi everyone, hope you are feeling positive and healthy. Please subscribe with all bell notifications if you haven't already, and please don't hesitate to leave your valuable feedback and advice below. Thank you very much. Let's jump into the stories. What's your best but wait, it gets worse story? An acquaintance got married in an extravagant $80,000 ceremony. That's $57,000 in freedom dollars, and broke up on their honeymoon. But wait, it gets worse. They split because the groom was cheating on the bride with a string of one-night stands. Meanwhile, the bride was having an ongoing affair with the best man. But wait, it gets worse. They pretended to stay married for 6 months after out of shame, but it all came tumbling down when he made a huge Facebook rant calling her a whore and tagging all their friends and family in it with the most dramatic crapstorm of a comments section known to humanity. But wait, it gets worse. The bride and the best man decided they wanted to have a baby and she immediately ran off with him and got knocked up. Friend of mine just lost her ex-husband and father of her child to a motorcycle accident. But wait, it gets worse. 15-year-old son had a birthday a few days after the accident. Gift arrived in the mail day of the birthday. His father had gotten him motorcycle lessons. Just heartbreaking. I was a manager at a hotel in Oakland. A valet parker took a guest's Corvette out for a joyride. He lost control of the car in a residential area and crashed into a parked car in a driveway. The Corvette and the parked car smashed through the home's garage door and caught on fire. The home partially burned down. The valet was caught by the police a block away fleeing on foot with a broken leg. Got rear-ended by a truck. Pulled over to check my trunk on a hilly street. A car parked behind me rolled downhill and crushed me between it and my newly messed up trunk. Suffered some cracked ribs. A co-worker of mine, we'll call Andy, had a brother we'll call Mike. Mike's wife died from cancer, leaving Mike and his 2 kids who were around 5 and 7 years old. But wait, it gets worse. Overcome with grief, Mike ended up killing himself, leaving behind his 2 kids. But wait, it gets worse. Andy had to sue his own parents to get custody of Mike's kids due to several issues with the grandparents. But wait, it gets worse. Andy's wife died suddenly, leaving Andy to take care of Mike's 2 kids and his 2 kids around the same age. This all happened over a 3-year span. Also, just a minor clarity adjustment. In 2018, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in April. My stepdad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in June. My mom was diagnosed with cancer in September, treatable thankfully. One of my closest friends was diagnosed with cancer, also treatable, in October, and I had to have my 12-year-old bunny put down a few days later. Then in November, my aunt died. I was in work when I took the call about my aunt and I just couldn't stop laughing because it was so ridiculous that this was happening all one after the other. It was hysteria. I wasn't amused by her passing. Fast forward to 2020. My stepdad died at the beginning of May and my dad died at the beginning of June. The friend who had cancer in 2018 called me the day after my dad's death to say her cancer is back and it's in her bones, and then my dad's funeral was scheduled for 3 days before Father's Day, which happened to be the day before my birthday this year. So yeah, that's my tale of woe. Worst thing is, I'm not convinced I'm even at the end of the story yet. Edit. Thank you for all the kind thoughts. I'm sorry to hear how many other people have had similar experiences. Hope you're all doing okay. I am absolutely fine. The only positive thing about knowing someone is going to die is having the chance to spend quality time with them and make happy memories. I even got married early this year to make sure my dad and stepdad could share the day with the family. There's no link between the cancer diagnoses and the area. Everyone lives in different cities. 2 of the people had a genetic cancer risk and the others were elderly. I also promise I am not radioactive. Also, please stop saying I should sue the medical team at Bascom Palmer, several of whom I befriended during my treatments. I'd be dead if it wasn't for these people. Their initial assessment was 100% correct. A mole on your eye is just like a mole anywhere else. Normally, totally harmless, unless it decides to grow into something else. Went to my eye doctor for my annual checkup. He says, "Oh, there's a spot there that wasn't there last year. You need to go see this specialist." So I did. Then he said, "Ah, yeah, this looks bad, go to this other specialist in Miami." I go to Miami. They go, "Yeah, it's a mole, don't worry about it and call us if you notice any changes." But wait, it gets worse. A couple of years later I go back for another checkup and mention my eyesight got a bit worse. My eye doctor goes, that thing got bigger. Yeah, you should probably go get that thing looked at again." So, back to Miami. Specialist goes, "Okay, well, it's cancerous now, I need you in surgery next week. I have to figure out how to save your life." A week later they do a biopsy and find out my eyesight got worse because it created a cataract. so they fixed that too. Then the following week I go and get a mother freaking radiation patch attached to my eye for 3 days. But wait, it gets worse. So, I think I'm past the worst of it until one morning I wake up and I've gone completely blind in that eye and I'm in searing pain. Another drive to Miami. The freaking tumor exploded in my eye. Tumor necrosis is the medical term. Very rare complication. They sit me down and go, "Hey, that I may have to go." Sorry dude, but wait, it didn't get worse after that. Thanks to some intensive therapy I didn't lose the eye. In fact, they were even able to save my vision a few months later with reconstructive surgery. I currently live in a 3-bed 1-bath house. My roommates were getting married and had a bunch of bridesmaids over at the time. A couple of them stayed the night after drinking. I wake up the next morning with a massive crap festering in my stomach. Every move I make I feel it's just gonna squeeze out. I heard both girls in the bathroom giggling and getting ready, so I panic, grab a roll of toilet paper and head to a remote part of the backyard. When I went out back, I left the door cracked enough for our crapster to sneak out. I didn't see him while I was crafting and ran back inside to grab a plastic bag. The girls had just walked into the living room. I chatted them up, avoiding the fact that I just crap in the backyard. Finally they left and I returned to my crap hole. It was half eaten and my little old dog was face down it, slurping it up. Disgusting, right? I had to clean his face off with rags and water and soap. Before I could muster all of the items up, he jumped on the back patio furniture and ran his lousy little face through everything. Then he shook, as I walked up to him, flinging my own feces every which way. I finally cleaned him and put him inside. I cleaned up the couch pretty quickly and it being outside furniture, I was able to blast it down with a power hose. Not bad, right? Quick and easy? Nope. I walked back into a monstrosity. Poor guy ate the crap so fast, and it being crap, it didn't settle well. This isn't an exaggeration when I say that I counted 16 different piles of dog vomit feces throughout the house, most of it on the couches. For the next 12 hours, cleaned up my own crap turned dog vomit, basking in the smell of horrors for what felt like forever. I worked in an operating room and was on call. Arriving at the hospital, checked in with the doc and patient in pre-op. At least once per year we get someone with something stuck in their ass. The young man was there with his mom and sister, who explained the dildo got stuck Friday night, but that their grandma was sick so they waited until Sunday to bring him to the hospital so he could see her. Then per usual the family and patient is asked if they have any questions before we take him back. Mom says yeah. While he's in there, can you test him for STDs? His sister tested positive and was operating the dildo, so we want to make sure. Had a tooth pulled, got dry socket, finally recovered and had the implant surgery. Got dry socket again. Also, found out laughing gas and hydrocodone gives me panic attacks. I was in a rush because I woke up late. I then stubbed my toe really badly on the table. I had to rush to the embassy to get my passport done. I almost finished the 3-hour drive to get there when I realized I forgot all the documents I needed for my passport. This happened about 10 years ago. My boyfriend called me in the morning and dumped me over the phone. I was really upset and forgot to finish the laundry I'd started, so I had to go into work out of dress code. Of course, that would be the day our district manager was visiting and I got written up on the spot even though it was the first time I'd ever been out of dress code. Spent my break crying because the universe was just taking a dump on me. But wait, it gets worse. When I got home that evening I had a notice of eviction taped to my door because we had apparently been illegally sublet the apartment and had no clue. Didn't even cry because at that point it was just yup, that seems about right for today. I work at an office. The building is owned by my boss, who is too cheap to shell out for actual maintenance service and has employees do handiwork around the clock. One day, it started to snow. The snow was sticking to the sidewalk and showed no signs of letting up, so of course me and my coworkers had to go out and clean it. So while my boss sat in his nice, cushy office, we start shoveling. One of my coworkers, let's call him X, is relatively new and having grown up in an apartment complex, has never shoveled before. Well, maybe that contributed to what happened next. He starts pushing the shovel in front of him at a crotch level, and eventually, the shovel head gets stuck on a raised brick and it pushes the handle end of the shovel into X's crotch. There was no shovel handle because he had been given a broken shovel with a rusted end. Castration being imminent, X proceeds to tuck and roll off the sidewalk and into oncoming traffic. Fortunately for X, somebody grabbed him and pulled him back to safety. Boss drove him to the emergency room and paid for the resulting tetanus shot and 14 stitches on the inner thigh. Needless to say, he was not allowed to shovel again. Also, a word. Was raped. Then didn't get my period again for another 3 months. Oh goodness, I don't even know where to start with this. But here goes nothing. Last December 26th my phone rang early in the morning. My dad had passed away unexpectedly in the night sometime. One day after Christmas and the day before his birthday. I try to help my mom get through all the legal paperwork and things that comes after a spouse dies. Made sure she had groceries and company multiple times a week. I lived in a different town from my mom, so I was traveling a lot between towns. 6 weeks after my father passed, my mom fell ill. I brought her to the hospital early one Wednesday morning, had her flown out to a bigger hospital later that afternoon. She passed away that Saturday. Apparently she had an aggressive form of cancer, and any symptoms she must have been feeling we attributed to grief. But wait, there's more. The night of my mom's funeral, which I planned and made arrangements for, my horrible sister gets wasted and goes bananas, keeping me up all night when I was already physically and emotionally exhausted. The few days that her and her husband were in town, they basically just took what they wanted and accused me of stealing things. Not to my face, but to family friends. I was left to clear, clean, and get the house ready for sale by myself. My mother had so many things from deceased family members that she hadn't had time to go through, sort, and donate yet, so I did by myself. But wait, there's more. 6 weeks after my mother passed away, while I was working on her house, I miscarried. In the last few weeks I have found out that I have fibroids and potential cancer in my uterus/cervix, so I have a whole other path of uncertainty to walk down in the coming months. As far as I'm concerned, 2020 can hurry up and get the hell over already. Monday the 3rd. I know no one will see this, but my dear grandma passed away around 3 this morning. I just can't believe this keeps happening. A woman I know got divorced just days after her wedding because she discovered that her new husband had an affair. But wait, it gets worse. She found out because apparently he cheated on the wedding with his affair, who also was invited. They were busted by the father of the bride. My grandmother died on Thanksgiving Day in front of the whole family. My grandmother had gotten diagnosed with brain cancer about 6 months prior, and knowing that she was in hospice care, much of the family decided to come visit for one last Thanksgiving, even though she was unconscious in the next room. The entire day, the cooking was going on despite Grandma's condition, and teenage me spent many hours salivating over a whole roasted pig being barbecued outside in place of a turkey. I was pretty stoked. Just as the sizzling pig is being taken off the barbecue, the hospice nurse sticks her head outside and announces that it's time. My grandmother at this exact moment is passing away. We all go inside, gather around the bed, and for 45 minutes or so, I watch as my grandmother gasps for air, twitches and dies. It was a little traumatic. For some reason after that, we decide we are going to still sit down and eat dinner. I'm watching the barbecue pig be chopped up, and as I'm thinking I can probably still get myself to eat some of it, they douse it all in vinegar and chili flakes, ruining it. So as I try to choke down this enormous disappointment, after watching my grandmother die, the morticians come and wheel her body out through the living room, and at that point, I was pretty much done. When I was 6 years old, the natural gas detector alarm kept going off, so my mom had to call the fire department to check if there was any dangerous natural gases. The fire department came and basically scientifically told my mom that her constant farting kept setting it off. I had to remove my wisdom tooth in a really cheap dental clinic. The dentist has an eye problem in which she removes my tooth besides my wisdom tooth instead of my wisdom tooth with manual equipment. Removing one tooth is almost an hour. She then removes the not my wisdom tooth, and as soon as she realizes her mistake, she then began on my real wisdom tooth. But as soon as she started working on it, the anesthesia began to wear off. At the end I have to get a huge stitch on the side of not my wisdom tooth was supposed to be, and I have to go on my first day of work on Monday. Surgery happened on a Friday. Edit 1. Wow. Didn't think this would blow up overnight. It happened 2016. I'm a broke college kid who just graduated college that time, so I cannot get good lawyers or sue. Last year, March, my mill dies after lingering from a stroke for a few months. April, doctor sees something on mammogram and son is hospitalized for suicidal thoughts. May, testing and diagnosed with breast cancer. June, July and August, surgery and treatment for breast cancer. They got it all. August, father-in-law dies from lung cancer. October, son tries to hang himself and is in the hospital for 8 days. He is doing better now. This year, the same son has been in 2 car accidents, neither his fault. One does $17,000 in damage to his brand new car. And my sister just died last week. I've told this a few times, but it's just wild. In April 2017, on my birthday, my family came over for dinner and cake. It was my sister, her husband, my niece, my parents, my brother, his then fiancée, now wife, and my GF. So we're having a nice time, eating hoagies, subs for those not from Philly, and my newly 2-year-old niece decided to jump on the couch. While my sister headed over to stop her, my niece slipped and with a loud bang hit her head on the coffee table. My sister yelped and quickly scooped up her daughter. My niece was crying and my sister was trying to calm her. Everything was quiet for a moment, then my sister screamed. She rushed into the kitchen and I looked at my niece's head. There was blood. A lot of blood. We spin into a panic as my sister is hyperventilating. I quickly soak up the blood with a paper towel and notice only a very tiny cut. She didn't even need stitches. My father grabbed some ice and a rag and put pressure on the cut. My brother-in-law took my sister and niece to the hospital as the rest of us cleaned up a bit before heading over. So as we're cleaning, my then 14-year-old deaf Cocker Spaniel decided he wanted a hoagie. I glance over to the table, only to see his face slowly reaching for one. We all notice and run over to stop him, but that hoagie was no more. Only scraps remained. So as we were cleaning said scraps, my dog walks back into the kitchen, looks at us, and craps on the floor. What the F? TLDR, my niece fell, cut her head. Family freaks. Old dog takes this opportunity to eat a hoagie and promptly crap on the floor. My niece hit fine BTW. A month ago though my dad had the pandemic as he was quite fluish, vomiting etc. Test comes back no he doesn't have it, but still sick. A few days later, the day after my brother's birthday, he dies on his bedroom floor of a massive heart attack. We're all in shock. Then my brother starts getting heart pains, probably from stress or anxiety, but insists on getting an EKG, feels like he's going to pass out all the time. Probably fine, but still stressful. 3 weeks to the day after my father dies I get a phone call that my mother cannot breathe, almost fainted on the stairs, needs me to take her to the ER. I'm convinced she has the pandemic. She didn't. She's there till 3 a.m. Needed 2 blood transfusions because her iron levels are insanely low. The day after that, after we've taken her home and start working on a nutrition plan, the dog gets bit by something, starts limping and drooling and we have to rush him to the vet to make sure he's not having an allergic reaction. He's fine now, so hooray. Been a rough month guys. Friends of mine were getting married. They were planning a huge, fancy wedding in the major city where they lived. They both had large families and many friends. About a month before the wedding, the groom's mother has a massive heart attack. Miraculously, she somehow survives. But it seems unlikely she'll be able to attend the wedding because it was being held about 1,000 miles away from mom's home. However, she continues to improve and her doctor determines that she will be healthy enough to travel to the wedding by car. So, the groom's parents start heading out about 3 days before the wedding so they can take the trip slowly and get to the major city the day before the wedding. Mom's tired, but doing okay. She decides to skip out on the rehearsal dinner so that she can conserve her energy for the wedding and reception. Mom wakes up the next day, gets dressed, gets her hair and nails done, looks gorgeous. Her husband drives her to the church and gets her settled in the front pew. The wedding is to start in about 15 minutes. Just as the bride is getting ready to walk down the aisle, Mom collapses in the church. An ambulance is called. Groom helps get Mom into the ambulance. Dad goes with Mom to the hospital, with groom's blessing. Wedding goes on as scheduled about 30 minutes after the initial start time because there are 2 other weddings scheduled at the church that particular day. Wedding ceremony is beautiful. Then, there was a gorgeous reception nearby just afterward. Reception is beautiful and then there was an after party that evening, also a ton of fun. We find out the next day that the groom's mother had passed in the church and was dead by the time the ambulance arrived. They made a show of trying to revive her, but she was gone. The groom knew this, but didn't want to ruin his bride's wedding day, so, though he had just watched his mother die, he plastered a smile on his face and got through the day. He just told the bride they were taking his mom to the hospital to stabilize her. He didn't tell her what actually happened until the next day. The whole thing was so crazy, but, despite all of it, they're still married 25 years later and have 3 gorgeous kids, so while the wedding was kind of a disaster, the marriage most definitely worked. I think probably the worst week of my life was getting my wisdom teeth out. I mean, I'll take my parents' divorce over doing that crap again. I got my teeth out, and I woke up to being yanked out of my chair by the dentist to go to the recovery room. I immediately started crying cause I didn't know what was going on. Once there, I had to ask them to go get my mom 3 times because I was calling in and out of sleep and I didn't understand what the nurse was saying. I get home and my mouth doesn't hurt that bad, but in still high AF and can't swallow because my spit was all bloody and gross. So I literally just cried and drooled on my mom till I passed out again. I'm 21. Not a great look. I woke up and everything was fine for the first 2 days, but it became abundantly clear that I was allergic to whatever antibiotics they had me on. I threw up for 6 days, and the dentist wouldn't take me seriously until I started throwing up blood. I couldn't eat solid food, and I have a permanent aversion to chocolate ice cream now. Fine going down, not great coming up. When he finally asked me to come in so he could check me out, there was a huge snowstorm and we were stranded for 2 days. Then, I missed an exam because I couldn't do anything without vomiting, and had to get a doctor's note from the dentist, which was a whole other ordeal. The only good thing that happened was I lost like 10 pounds, which I immediately gained back because 4 weeks later the pandemic hit. Now I've got this crazy scars in the back of my mouth that I don't think healed properly, and I haven't been able to go back to the dentist because the pandemic. Note to anyone getting their teeth out, the actual process and recovery isn't that bad. Just make sure you're not allergic to the medicine they give you. Was on Tinder and met this girl. We talked for a bit and decided to exchange snaps. A few snaps and I find out she has a kid. We are both 18, but wait, it gets worse. I find out she's not 18 like her profile, but actually 15. But wait, it gets worse. I tell her we cannot talk at all and she says age isn't a problem, my baby daddy is 21. And that's when I decided Tinder wasn't for me. I went on holiday with my parents to Ireland a few years back, and one of the days of the trip was one of the worst days of my life. The trip as a whole was fantastic, but this one day just sucked. My parents had booked all the hotels through a travel agency, and the night that we were in Cork, we were booked to stay in this spa resort because we got a good deal or something. At first when we pull up it looked super fancy, you know, like a typical resort, but then we find out then we're not actually staying in the main building and they bring us out to these little cottages. Okay, fine. But then we get in and the entire place smells like sewer and there's a million stains everywhere. We're like whatever at first, we're not that picky and it's only a night. The next morning I wake up to find out that my period has started, so that's already a bad start to a day. Then I find out that the shower doesn't work and we all have to take baths. My parents go first and then it's my turn and we run out of hot water, so I have to take a bath in puddle from what's left in cold water. But wait, it gets worse. We then decide that we're gonna buy tickets for one of those hop-on hop-off tour buses. We buy the tickets and we get on the bus and it's good at first. We're seeing the sights, it's pretty whatever. But then, the bus suddenly gets on the freaking highway and we're sitting on the open top as branches are whizzing by over our heads fast enough that it could decapitate you if we weren't ducking. We find out from the other passengers that this tour bus wasn't a tour bus, but instead a bus taking people back to their cruise ship 40 minutes away. So we have to sit on the open top of a double-decker bus on the highway with branches almost hitting us for 40 minutes. All while I'm terrified that I'm gonna leak through my pants because I'm on my period. We eventually get to the cruise ship and we find out there's a train station nearby. So we go to the train station to get a train back to Cork, but the last one just left. So we had to wait an hour or so until the next one came. Don't really remember what happened after that. It's funny now to look back on, but I was pissed when it was happening. Moral of the story is to not let travel agents book your hotels and to double check the bus you're getting on. I highly recommend Ireland though, beautiful place. I work in the care of the disabled. One fine morning, I go up the stairs to wake a resident. I see a nice little turd on the ground. I sweat a bit at myself, but I'm thinking at least the person who did this didn't step into it and smear it everywhere. It's just a nice little dollop. I run downstairs to get gloves, bucket, etc., and I'm gone for literally 2 minutes. I get back upstairs and the nice little dollop is now a flat pancake, and there are footprints. I follow the footprints, they lead into a bedroom. I knock on the door and open it. Inside, one of my residents is furiously washing his slippers with his bare hands, cleaning off the crap he stepped in. When he spots me, he starts yelling at me about that little fat bitch who's always crapping and pissing on the floor. I just lost it at that point. The image of him washing up his slipper, mumbling to himself and getting into a rage still makes me laugh. Cleanup was a bit more than I'd wanted, but not the worst I have ever seen. Better to laugh about these things than to get angry. Not sure if it's my best, but it's the first one that came to mind. Messed up a trick skateboarding, air in half pipe, landed with the toes of my back foot off the board. They caught on the ground and my foot twisted, dislocated my ankle. As my foot continued to turn, the bones in my ankle got jammed against the bones in my leg, so I broke off the end of one of my leg bones too, fibula. 3 days in hospital, metal plate and 9 screws. One of the screws broke later. 2020. So after finding out she hooked up with 2 guys from work and one of their 14-year-old sons, my ex and I split. Of course, neither of us had a place to go, so we continued to live together for about a year after. But wait, it gets worse. Through this year I got to meet her many new boyfriends, the star members being a meth head with a gun, a guy who molested her sister in high school, and a chem guy that posted them having intimate time without telling her he was recording. But wait, it gets worse. Finally she comes back from a week of staying with the most recent guy and tells me she's finally found true love and begins to berate me when I tell her I won't let her move our son into the house of her new beau. on the south side of Wichita. After only a week together, her exact words were, "It's not fair to make me choose between happiness and her son." She ultimately chose to move out without our son, who I've raised on my own since. But wait, it gets worse. The love of her life is nearing 50, a lifelong drug user, and paraplegic from a drunken car wreck that he caused 10 years ago. That week they spent together was while he was in the hospital for pressure stores. Mind you, she's 22 at the time and this guy is literally older than both our dads. But wait, it gets worse. That wreck that left him wheelchair bound, that was the wreck that killed my ex's aunt. That's right, her new love is the man her aunt was dating when she was 12, who her whole family blames for the death of said aunt for deciding to drive home while blackout drunk. This has completely destroyed her relationship with her family. But wait, it gets worse. They got married after a year together, but she still calls me to bitch about how awful he is. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories delivered to you. Thanks for listening. See you later.